How do you stay warm at negative 84 degrees Fahrenheit without modern technology? For centuries, Inuit people have mastered Arctic survival, transforming frozen wastelands into livable homes. Their igloo heating methods combine human ingenuity with natural principles, creating comfort in one of Earth's most extreme environments through remarkably simple yet brilliantly effective solutions. Igloos are ingenious shelters that offer remarkable comfort even in the harshest conditions. We're talking about environments where temperatures plummet to negative 84 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 64 degrees Celsius, cold so extreme that most of us have never experienced anything remotely close. Yet inside these snow houses, people have thrived for countless generations. The secret doesn't lie in some complicated heating system, but in the humble snow itself. Those white blocks contain millions of tiny air pockets that work together as nature's insulation. When Inuit builders carefully stack snow blocks 12 to 18 inches thick, they're essentially creating the world's most effective thermal barrier, one that insulates approximately 40 times better than brick. Modern home builders charge premium prices for insulation that doesn't perform half as well. Snow may just be frozen water, but an igloo's design relies on clever physics. As occupants generate body heat, the inner surface begins to melt slightly. When temperatures drop at night, this thin layer refreezes into ice, forming a windproof shell while the snow behind it maintains insulation. Over time, the structure strengthens itself. The longer it's used, the better it protects. The entrance design shows equally brilliant thinking. Rather than a simple doorway, traditional igloos feature tunnels that dip below the main living area. This creates a cold sink where frigid air collects, preventing it from flowing upward into the living space. Next time your heating bill arrives, you might wonder why your modern home doesn't incorporate this simple but effective feature. Even the dome shape serves multiple purposes. Beyond its structural strength, this design ensures that warm air circulates evenly throughout the space. No cold corners, no wasted heat. But just how warm can it get? Inside a well-built igloo, temperatures can be as much as 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius warmer than outside. When the Arctic winter brings negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit outdoor temperatures, the interior might maintain a relatively mild 30 degrees Fahrenheit. While that might still sound chilly to those of us accustomed to centrally heated homes, it's perfectly comfortable with appropriate clothing. Most of us turn up the thermostat when we could simply put on a sweater, a lesson in efficiency the Inuit mastered long ago. While we waste energy heating entire houses to tropical temperatures, traditional Arctic dwellers focused on creating efficient microclimates of comfort. Their heating bills, non-existent. Finding the right snow is crucial, not too powdery and not too wet, and cutting blocks that taper slightly inward creates that perfect dome. The final block, called the keystone, locks everything in place. It's pure engineering genius achieved with the simplest material on Earth. No mortgage required. What's truly astonishing is the speed of construction. An experienced builder can create a basic emergency igloo in under an hour and a family-sized dwelling in just a few hours. The tools? Nothing more sophisticated than a snow knife traditionally crafted from bone, antler, or ivory. The record belongs to an Inuit hunter named Tukilki, who reportedly built an emergency shelter in just 20 minutes during a sudden 1931 blizzard. Try getting that kind of service from a modern contractor. These snow structures become surprisingly robust. The compacted blocks gradually harden into an ice-like shell strong enough that polar bears, weighing up to 1,500 pounds, can walk across them without causing damage. Meanwhile, many of us live in modern homes where a heavy rainstorm causes concern about roof integrity. The practical knowledge extended to children who grew up playing games to see who could create the most efficient ventilation hole, one small enough to preserve heat, but large enough to allow smoke to escape. While modern kids master video games, these children learn skills directly connected to survival. Both might be having fun, but only one group was simultaneously preparing for life in an extreme environment. The principles haven't been lost on forward-thinking architects either. Today's passive solar design, thermal mass construction, and natural insulation concepts all echo the same physics that make igloos work so effectively. Some eco-conscious builders are incorporating similar thermal mass principles that store heat during warm periods and release it when temperatures drop. a technology the Inuit perfected centuries ago without a single engineering degree among them. When you next consider what constitutes ingenious design, remember that these simple snow houses represent one of humanity's most remarkable adaptations to extreme environments. Without modern materials, power tools, or energy sources, Arctic peoples created comfortable homes in one of Earth's most challenging settings. Of course, even the best snow walls need something extra when temperatures reach their bitter extremes. For those particularly frigid nights, Inuit families relied on another brilliant invention, the Quic. At first glance, it might not look impressive. It's essentially a curved stone bowl with a moss or cotton grass wick running along one edge, filled with rendered seal or whale blubber. But this unassuming device is the technological cornerstone of traditional Arctic life, providing warmth, light, and cooking capabilities all at once. During cultural demonstrations, elders showcase the precise technique of using a Quic, carefully arranging the cotton grass wick along the rim. These methods have remained unchanged for generations, proving that some skills stand the test of time without the need for modernization. The genius of the Quic lies in its fuel. Seal and whale blubber contain incredibly energy-dense fat, much more efficient than wood, which is scarce in the Arctic. When properly rendered, this fat burns clean with almost no smoke. A single cup of rendered seal fat can produce enough heat and light to last through a long Arctic night. Temperature control comes from adjusting the wick. An experienced Quic tender can regulate heat output by carefully manipulating how much of the wick extends over the edge of the lamp. Move more wick forward, and the flame grows larger and hotter. Pull some back, and it reduces. This level of control transforms the Quic from a simple heat source to a precision instrument. The numbers are impressive. A properly maintained Quic can raise the interior temperature of an igloo by 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. That might not sound like much, but in the context of survival, it makes all the difference. The difference between 25 degrees Fahrenheit and 35 degrees Fahrenheit inside an igloo represents the gap between discomfort and relative comfort. The stone construction of traditional Quics serves multiple purposes. Soapstone, commonly used for these lamps, retains heat exceptionally well. Long after the flame is extinguished, the warm stone continues radiating heat. It's essentially a natural heat sink that extends the effective warming time of the fuel. Somehow, ancient Arctic peoples figured out thermal mass heating without a single YouTube tutorial. What makes these lamps particularly clever is how they integrate into igloo life. Typically placed on a small raised platform, the Quic occupies a central position in the living space. This strategic placement maximizes heat distribution while providing light where it's most needed. The lamp's curved shape directs the majority of its heat upward and outward, not down into the snow floor where it would be wasted. Traditional Quics come in various sizes, from small travel versions that can fit in a hunting pack to large family models over a foot long. Size selection depends on purpose. Smaller for temporary shelters, larger for permanent winter dwellings. The largest recorded Quic, housed in the Canadian Museum of History, measures nearly 2 feet across and could heat a multi-family igloo. Fuel management presents another fascinating aspect of Quic use. Preparing blubber for burning requires skill and knowledge. Raw blubber burns poorly and produces unpleasant smoke. But when properly rendered, slowly heated to separate the oil from other tissues, it becomes an efficient, clean-burning fuel. Women traditionally mastered this skill, carefully rendering batches of blubber to produce the cleanest burning oil. The highest quality oil came from specific parts of the seal, particularly fat from around the back and ribs. This knowledge represents generations of refined expertise passed down through families. There's a particular rhythm to tending a Quic that becomes second nature to those who use them regularly. Every few hours, the wick requires adjustment. Using a specialized tool called a takuti, the tender carefully manipulates the wick to maintain the ideal flame height. Too tall and it produces smoke, too short and it provides insufficient heat. Community members often note that experienced tenders could adjust their family Quic almost automatically. Many could reach over to tend it without even fully waking during the night. These movements become deeply ingrained through years of practice. Beyond its practical functions, the Quic holds profound cultural significance. It represents the heart of the home, a gathering point where families share stories, work on crafts, and prepare food. Many Inuit cultural practices, from cooking techniques to educational traditions, evolved around the steady light and warmth of these lamps. Modern adaptations exist, though many families treasure their traditional stone versions. Contemporary Quics might use cotton wicking instead of Arctic cotton grass, and some ceremonial versions even run on cleaner-burning modern fuels. But the basic design remains largely unchanged, a testament to its perfect adaptation to Arctic needs. One of the most remarkable aspects of Quic technology is its sustainability. Nothing goes to waste. The blubber provides fuel, while leftover scraps feed dogs or become ingredients in other foods. Even the carbon residue that occasionally builds up on the lamp has traditional uses, including as a pigment for tattoos and decorative artwork. Talk about zero-waste living before it was cool enough to have its own hashtag. The Quic represents the perfect technological adaptation to extreme circumstances, using locally available materials to meet essential needs while minimizing waste. It embodies the principle that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most elegant. In a world where we need a 100-page manual to operate a new thermostat, there's something refreshingly brilliant about a heating system you can literally learn to use in an afternoon. While the Quic provides essential heat supplementation, it works in partnership with another vital heating source, one that requires no fuel at all. Because did you know that humans are walking furnaces? It's true, before Edison invented the light bulb, humans had already perfected being one. During physical activity, this heat production can increase 5-fold or more. Now, imagine several people in a small, well-insulated space. The temperature rises naturally without any additional heat source. This basic principle forms the cornerstone of Igloo heating. No subscription plan or installation fees required. This metabolic furnace is even more impressive when you consider its fuel efficiency. The human body converts approximately 20% of its food energy into mechanical work, with the remaining 80% released as heat. While engineers might consider this inefficient for a machine, it's perfect for Arctic survival. The wasted energy is exactly what keeps the igloo warm. Every movement, every heartbeat, even the electrical signals firing in your brain contribute to this continuous heat output. In the confined space of an igloo, this metabolic heat becomes a powerful warming force. A family of 4 to 6 people naturally raises the interior temperature to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit from body heat alone. This might not sound warm by Southern standards, but it represents the difference between comfort and freezing in the Arctic context, where exterior temperatures can plummet to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. That temperature differential of 90 degrees Fahrenheit or more is achieved without a single watt of external energy input, an efficiency that modern heating engineers can only dream of replicating while they sip coffee from their world's best engineer mugs. The human body's heat output isn't just significant, it's surprisingly consistent. At rest, the core body temperature remains stable at around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of the environmental conditions. This creates a reliable heat differential between the body and the surrounding air. The greater this differential, the more rapid the heat transfer. In very cold environments, a human body can radiate over 100 watts of heat, enough to keep an entire igloo habitable when the outside world is frozen solid. When someone says things are heating up in an igloo, it's not just conversation, it's a literal measurement of survival. An elderly Inuit hunter once shared a piece of traditional wisdom. People are the best stoves, burning food instead of wood and generating heat as long as they're alive. This insight reflects a deep understanding of human thermodynamics, recognized long before modern science explained it or marketing departments could turn it into an expensive biothermal solution. Daily activities inside the igloo boost this heating effect considerably. Cooking meals, mending tools, or telling stories all involve movement, which increases metabolic rates and heat output. Have you ever noticed how a room feels warmer after hosting a party? The same principle applies in the igloo, but with much greater impact due to the superior insulation and enclosed space. It's like hosting a dinner party where the guests actually make your heating bill go down instead of emptying your refrigerator. Measurements of occupied igloos have shown that normal household activities can boost interior temperatures by an additional 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit above the baseline provided by resting metabolic rates. Something as simple as 2 people working on preparing food can noticeably warm the entire structure. The more active the occupants, the warmer the igloo becomes. a natural feedback system that encourages productivity during waking hours. It's perhaps the only heating system in the world where arguing vigorously about whose turn it is to do the dishes actually helps keep everyone warm. Human bodies also release moisture, about a pint of water vapor per person per day, just through breathing. This humidity plays an important but often overlooked role in the igloo's thermal environment. Moderate humidity makes air feel warmer at the same temperature compared to dry air. The moisture from breathing adds comfort to the interior climate, though too much can cause problems. The igloo's design accounts for this, with the porous snow walls absorbing excess moisture to maintain ideal humidity levels. It's Arctic climate control where the thermostats and humidifiers are the people themselves. This relationship between activity and warmth creates interesting social dynamics within traditional Inuit communities. During particularly cold snaps, communal activities like group games, dancing, or storytelling sessions weren't just cultural practices. They were practical warming strategies. Anthropologists have documented special winter games designed to generate maximum bodily movement and thus heat, while requiring minimal space. These games serve dual purposes, maintaining community bonds while literally keeping the home fires burning through metabolic activity. No one ever had to say, "I'm just exercising to burn calories." They were actually burning calories to avoid freezing. The heating system works best with multiple occupants. Traditionally, igloos weren't solitary dwellings, but family homes. The collective heat output of several family members created comfortable living conditions. Larger extended families sometimes built connected igloo complexes with tunnels joining multiple domes. This arrangement maximized the living space while maintaining heat efficiency. An Arctic version of apartment living, you might say, but with neighbors you actually want to be around. Children, with their naturally higher metabolic rates, contribute disproportionately to this heating system. A child at play can generate heat equivalent to a small space heater. Their constant movement and higher heart rates make them thermal powerhouses relative to their size. In fact, physiological studies have shown that children generate approximately 25% more heat per pound of body weight than adults. Within the igloo ecosystem, the energy of young ones isn't just tolerated, it's an essential component of family warmth. For once in human history, a child bouncing off the walls was actually helping the household budget. The dome shape of the igloo plays a crucial role in maximizing the effectiveness of body heat. The curved walls create natural convection currents that circulate warm air efficiently. As body heat warms the air, it rises toward the center of the dome. The rounded ceiling prevents the formation of cold corners where heat would be lost, instead guiding the warm air in a continuous cycle throughout the living space. This natural circulation system distributes warmth evenly, preventing the temperature stratification that occurs in square-cornered structures. It's climate control engineering so effective that it doesn't need a 7-digit patent number or an app to control it. Sleep arrangements also maximize heat efficiency. Family members typically sleep close together on raised platforms, sharing body heat through proximity. Modern visitors sometimes describe this arrangement as uncomfortably close by Western standards, but in the Arctic context, it represents perfect thermal engineering. Sleeping platforms are positioned approximately 18 to 24 inches higher than floor level, placing sleepers in the warmest air zone of the igloo. Since warm air rises, this elevation can mean a temperature difference of 5 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit compared to floor level. The difference between comfortable sleep and shivering through the night. The proximity of sleeping arrangements also reduces the surface area exposed to cold air. When people sleep together, they only expose one side of their bodies to the cooler air. The other side is warmed by contact with another person. This principle of shared body heat and reduced exposure works on the same physical principles as huddling penguins in an Antarctic storm. For humans in an igloo, this shared warmth could increase the effective temperature by 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit compared to sleeping alone. In the Arctic, snuggling isn't just affectionate, it's thermodynamically efficient. The biological heating system of the igloo also demonstrates remarkable responsiveness. During the day, when activity levels are higher, more heat is naturally produced when needed. At night, as metabolic rates slow during sleep, less heat is generated. But this coincides perfectly with the time when occupants are bundled in insulating furs and sharing body heat through proximity. The system automatically adjusts to the circadian rhythm of human life without any mechanical controls or adjustments. No smart thermostat has ever achieved this level of intuitive response, despite all those colorful charts in the user manual. Of course, generating all this body heat requires fuel, and not just any fuel will do. Traditional Inuit diets represent one of the most specialized nutritional systems on Earth, perfectly adapted to fuel the body's internal furnace in extreme cold. While our modern diet debates center around counting calories and avoiding gluten, theirs focused on a much simpler question: will this keep me warm enough to survive until morning? Let's start with what might seem shocking to most people. The traditional Arctic diet consisted of approximately 75% fat. This wasn't by accident or preference alone, it was survival necessity. Fat provides 9 calories per gram, compared to only 4 calories per gram in carbohydrates or proteins. When your body needs maximum energy with minimum food volume, fat is simply the most efficient fuel source. The original high-fat diet wasn't about fitting into summer clothes, it was about not freezing to death in winter ones. Seal blubber, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, formed a cornerstone of this diet. A single pound of blubber contains roughly 4,000 calories, enough to fuel a person's metabolic needs for 2 full days. When stored in the body, this fat serves dual purposes: energy reserve and living insulation. The Inuit body adapted to metabolize these fats with remarkable efficiency, converting them directly into heat when needed. It's the ultimate 2-for-1 deal. Eat fat to stay warm, store what you don't use as insulation for later. Many traditional Arctic foods were often consumed raw, partially frozen, or fermented. There's solid science behind these practices. Raw meat preserves heat-sensitive nutrients that would be destroyed during cooking. Vitamin C, critical for preventing scurvy, remains intact in fresh raw meat but deteriorates quickly when heated. Without access to fruits and vegetables for most of the year, getting these vitamins required inventive solutions. No fancy juicers or vitamin supplements needed, just a fresh seal liver and a strong stomach. Preventing scurvy without access to citrus was a vital challenge in the Arctic, and the solution came from parts of animals often overlooked in modern diets. Organ meats like liver contain up to 10 times more vitamin C than muscle meat, with raw seal liver providing more of the nutrient than many fruits. Muktuk, the skin and blubber of whales, also offers a significant vitamin C boost, roughly the same as a medium orange per serving. Long before health food stores capitalized on superfoods, the Inuit had already perfected nutrient-rich eating. Fermented foods played another critical role. Traditional dishes like Igunakor fermented walrus and kiviak or fermented auk birds might turn the average person's stomach, but they provided essential nutrients throughout the winter. The fermentation process preserves vitamin C and creates beneficial bacteria that aid digestion in a diet extremely high in animal products. Thousands of years before probiotic yogurt became trendy, Arctic peoples were mastering the art of beneficial bacteria, though you probably won't see fermented walrus on a restaurant menu anytime soon. Blood consumption, while sounding like something from a horror movie, served as another ingenious nutritional strategy. Fresh animal blood contains essential minerals, particularly iron, along with proteins and electrolytes. During hunts, it wasn't uncommon to drink small amounts of blood from freshly caught animals, providing an immediate energy boost in environments where hypothermia was a constant threat. Unlike the vampires in movies, Inuit hunters didn't need mood lighting and capes, just practical nutrition when it mattered most. Their version of an energy drink came without the neon colors and marketing campaigns. The most misunderstood aspect of traditional Arctic nutrition is the near-total absence of carbohydrates. The human body typically uses carbohydrates as its primary fuel, but remarkably, it can shift into a metabolic state called ketosis when carbs are scarce. In this state, the body burns fat directly for energy. Modern science has only recently begun to understand the benefits of this metabolic pathway, but Inuit populations mastered it out of necessity centuries ago. They were doing keto before it had a trendy name and dedicated cookbook section. What's fascinating is how this high-fat diet affected thermogenesis, the body's heat production. Studies have found that people accustomed to high-fat, low-carb diets generate more heat after meals than those on typical Western diets. This thermic effect of food processing means that after eating fatty meats, the body temperature rises more significantly, a perfect adaptation to cold environments. Protein consumption in the traditional Arctic diet was moderate, typically about 20 to 25% of total calories. This is important because protein has the highest thermic effect of all macronutrients. The body uses approximately 30% of protein's calories just to digest and process it, releasing that energy as heat. This means eating protein-rich foods literally warms you from the inside out. A meal of seal meat caused the body to generate significant heat during digestion, turning mealtime into warming time. Who needs a heated dining room when your dinner itself is the heating system? Hydration followed equally specialized patterns. Drinking ice-cold water in freezing temperatures forces the body to expend precious energy warming that liquid to body temperature. Instead, traditional practices involve drinking warm broths made from meat and fat. These delivered hydration alongside additional calories and electrolytes without cooling the body's core. Some hunters even melted snow using body heat alone, keeping a small container of snow inside their clothing where it would slowly melt from their body warmth. A more energy-efficient approach than consuming it frozen. Nature's thermos with no fancy vacuum insulation required. The timing of meals was strategic too. Larger meals were often consumed before sleeping, providing sustained energy throughout the night when body temperatures naturally drop. This practice, sometimes criticized in modern dietary advice, made perfect sense in an environment where maintaining core temperature during sleep was critical to survival. It turns out your grandmother was right when she said never to go to bed hungry, especially if the bedroom is minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Children received special nutritional attention. Growing bodies need more calories per pound than adults, and in the harsh Arctic environment, proper nutrition for children wasn't just about growth, it was about survival. Children were given the richest, fattiest parts of animals to ensure they maintained adequate body heat. Their smaller bodies lost heat more quickly due to higher surface area to volume ratios, making proper nutrition even more critical. In this environment, eat your dinner, it's good for you, wasn't just parental nagging. It was potentially life-saving advice. The cultural practices around food reflected its critical importance. Hunters would share their catch with the entire community, ensuring that everyone received essential nutrition. This wasn't just generosity. It was a survival strategy that recognized the connection between proper nutrition and the body's ability to generate heat. A well-fed community was a warm community. The original sharing economy had nothing to do with smartphone apps and everything to do with collective survival. Today, as processed foods have entered many Arctic communities, health researchers have documented the negative impacts of moving away from traditional diets. Conditions like diabetes and heart disease, once rare among Inuit populations, have increased alongside the consumption of processed carbohydrates and sugars. The body's heating system simply works differently when fueled by modern processed foods versus traditional nutrient-dense animal products. It turns out you can't run an Arctic survival machine on convenience store snacks and expect the same results. While the human body generates valuable heat, no survival system is complete without proper protection from the elements. The next critical component in staying warm at negative 84 degrees Fahrenheit isn't found inside the body. The Arctic cold demands more than just shelter and diet. It requires specialized clothing that works as a portable microclimate. Traditional Inuit clothing isn't just warm, it's a technological marvel that modern outdoor gear companies still struggle to match. Exposed skin freezes in less than 30 seconds at these temperatures. The wind compounds this danger, creating wind chill factors that can drop the effective temperature another 20 to 30 degrees. In this environment, proper clothing isn't a fashion choice. It's the difference between life and death. Nobody's asking, does this parka make me look fat? When the alternative is, does this frostbite mean I'm losing my nose? Traditional Arctic clothing works on a deceptively simple principle: trap and manage body heat, rather than trying to generate it externally. The human body naturally produces heat. The trick is keeping it close. Caribou fur forms the foundation of traditional winter clothing. What makes caribou fur special? Each hair is hollow, creating millions of tiny air pockets that trap heat exceptionally well. This natural insulation works remarkably similarly to modern synthetic materials, but with one key advantage: caribou fur maintains its insulating properties even when damp. Most synthetic materials lose 70 to 80% of their insulating value when wet, but caribou fur retains about 80% of its insulating capability. Arctic clothing isn't just about materials, it's about engineering. The traditional parka features a unique double-layer design. The inner layer has the fur facing inward against the body, while the outer layer positions the fur outward. This creates a heat-trapping air zone between layers while allowing moisture from sweat to escape. The hood design shows equal ingenuity. Unlike modern hoods that leave the face exposed, traditional Inuit hoods create a tunnel-like microclimate around the face. The ruff, typically made from wolverine or wolf fur, serves a critical purpose. Unlike other furs, wolverines don't collect frost from breath moisture. This prevents the dangerous cycle of breath freezing, melting against skin, and then refreezing, a common cause of frostbite with inadequate face protection. The mittens follow similar principles, but add a crucial feature. They're designed oversized. This isn't poor tailoring, it's intentional. The extra space allows fingers to be pulled back into the palm area when maximum warmth is needed. Since fingers are extremely vulnerable to frostbite due to their high surface area to volume ratio, this design feature saves digits. Some traditional designs even include an inner pouch specifically meant for warming fingers against the palm, nature's hand warmer. Footwear may be the most sophisticated element of the entire system. Traditional kamiks or boots use a layered approach that begins with grasses or mosses stuffed into the bottom for insulation and moisture absorption. Next comes a soft fur liner sock, followed by the main boot constructed of sealskin or caribou hide. The boot design allows easy removal of the inner layers to dry them thoroughly, crucial for preventing moisture buildup that could lead to freezing. What's particularly clever about traditional Arctic clothing is how it manages the biggest threat to insulation: sweat. Physical activity inevitably generates moisture, which can quickly become deadly if it freezes against the skin. The solution? Clothing designed to be easily adjustable and partially removable during activity, then quickly reassembled during rest periods. The parka can be loosened at the waist to vent heat during exertion, then tightened again when stopping. This active management of body temperature prevents the dangerous cycle of overheating, sweating, and then freezing. It's the original performance athletic wear, except instead of helping you look good while jogging in the park, it keeps your sweat from turning into a personal ice vest that could kill you. The fit of traditional clothing reveals another counterintuitive principle. Unlike modern tight-fitting designs, Arctic garments are deliberately loose. This creates insulating air spaces between the body and the clothing, effectively adding another layer of protection. The only points where clothing fits snugly are at openings, wrists, ankles, and the face, where drawstrings or tailored designs prevent warm air from escaping and cold air from entering. It turns out that baggy clothes were actually high-tech survival gear long before teenagers started wearing them as a fashion statement. Children's clothing incorporates unique features addressing their special needs. Since children produce proportionally more heat but lose it faster due to their size, their clothing includes additional adjustability. Many traditional parkas for toddlers feature an enlarged hood and shoulder area that allows a child to be completely enclosed against a parent's body when necessary, sharing body heat directly. This design also allows for quick temperature checks without fully exposing the child to the elements. The entire Arctic clothing system, from inner layers to outer shells, typically weighs less than 10 pounds total, a remarkable achievement considering the extreme conditions it protects against. This lightweight allows for freedom of movement necessary for hunting and traveling across ice and snow. Modern cold weather gear providing similar warmth often weighs twice as much. While this remarkable clothing system kept traditional Arctic peoples warm during outdoor activities, their return to the igloo brought another level of protection. Anyone who's ever camped knows one universal truth: the ground gets cold at night. Sitting or sleeping directly on snow would drain body heat faster than an igloo melts in springtime. Traditional Inuit families solved this problem with a brilliantly simple solution. They didn't sit on the igloo floor at all. Instead, they built raised platforms covered with thick insulating layers of caribou hides. These platforms, typically 18 to 24 inches high, served multiple purposes in the igloo heating system. First, they created physical separation from the snow floor, eliminating direct contact with the frozen ground. Second, and more importantly, they positioned people in the dome's warmest zone. Remember how warm air rises? In the dome structure of an igloo, this creates distinct temperature zones. Measurements taken in traditional igloos have shown temperature differences of 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit between floor level and the mid-height of the dome. By raising their living and sleeping area to this sweet spot, families accessed significantly warmer air without any additional heating costs. The platforms weren't just piles of snow, they were carefully constructed extensions of the igloo architecture built from the same compacted snow blocks as the walls. Over time, these platforms hardened to an ice-like consistency, providing stable surfaces that wouldn't collapse or deform under the weight of multiple occupants. On top of these snow platforms went layers of insulation, usually thick caribou hides with the fur facing upward. Caribou fur makes an ideal insulating layer because each hollow hair creates a tiny air pocket. A typical caribou hide contains millions of these microscopic insulating chambers. When layered several hides deep, they create an insulating barrier that completely blocks the cold from the snow platform beneath. The entire family would eat, work, socialize, and sleep on these elevated sections. By concentrating activities on the platforms, they effectively created a smaller room within the igloo, one positioned exactly where the warmest air collected. This strategy maximized the benefit from every bit of heat generated by bodies, lamps, and cooking. The organization of sleeping quarters followed precise temperature management principles. Different family members were positioned strategically based on their natural heat output and cold tolerance. Elders, who typically generate less body heat and feel cold more acutely, were placed in the warmest central spots. Children, with their higher metabolic rates, often slept near the edges where they could act as living barriers against drafts. The coldest spot, furthest from the Quic and closest to the entrance, was usually reserved for the adult male hunter, whose higher muscle mass and cold adaptation made him best suited to handle lower temperatures. Who knew that calling dibs on sleeping spots was actually an ancient science? The platforms had practical benefits beyond temperature management. They created natural storage areas underneath, where items that needed to stay frozen could be kept. They also provided a clear visual division of space within the igloo: elevated areas for living, lower areas for storage and entry. During particularly cold periods, families sometimes constructed low snow walls around the edges of their platforms, creating even more contained spaces where body heat could concentrate. These temporary rooms within rooms could be disassembled during warmer periods or when more space was needed for activities. While elevated platforms provided crucial separation from the cold ground, sometimes even the best insulation needed a boost. This is where another clever innovation came into play. Metal cookware and heating tools are relatively recent inventions in the Arctic. Traditionally, Inuit families faced a challenge. How do you warm things without metal containers? Their ingenious solution was to use heated stones for a variety of warming purposes. The technique was deceptively simple. Select dense, non-porous stones like granite or basalt, heat them thoroughly in the Quic flame, and then use them as portable heat sources. These stones, typically palm-sized and oval-shaped for easy handling, could hold heat for hours after being removed from the flame. Water heating represents one of the most common uses. Placing several hot stones in a container made of hollowed driftwood, carved soapstone, or animal bladder would quickly bring water to a boil for cooking or drinking. By rotating fresh hot stones in and out of the container, water could be kept hot indefinitely without suspending the container directly over a flame. The thermal properties of stones made them particularly effective. Basalt, commonly found in many Arctic regions, has exceptional heat retention. A 2-pound basalt stone heated to 500 degrees Fahrenheit will still measure nearly 200 degrees Fahrenheit after an hour in freezing temperatures. This slow heat release made stones ideal for sustained warming rather than quick, intense heat. Food thawing and cooking often relied on these heated rocks. Frozen meat could be thawed efficiently by placing it between hot stones, allowing controlled defrosting without cooking the exterior before the interior thawed. For actual cooking, stones were arranged in shallow pits dug into the elevated sleeping platforms, creating a primitive but effective oven. Personal warming applications showed particular creativity. Small heated stones wrapped in pieces of hide became the original hand and foot warmers. Hunters preparing for extended trips would heat stones, wrap them carefully, and place them inside their clothing. These portable heat packets could keep extremities warm for hours during stillness activities like waiting at a breathing hole for seals. Medical treatments frequently used heated stones for relieving muscle pain or improving circulation in cold, stressed extremities. The stones would be wrapped in hides to prevent direct contact with skin, then applied to sore or cold areas of the body. The deep, penetrating heat worked remarkably well for improving blood flow to frostbitten areas without the burning risk of direct flame exposure. Stone heating technology had safety protocols that evolved through experience. Certain types of river rocks were carefully avoided as they contain moisture that can cause them to explode when heated. Users learned to identify safe heating stones by their density, color, and grain pattern. Nobody wants to be relaxing with a nice warm stone only to have it suddenly decide to redecorate the igloo walls with stone fragments. The knowledge of which stones work best for specific purposes was part of traditional education. Children learned to identify ideal heating stones by appearance and feel, an essential skill for their future survival. They also learned the handling techniques that prevented burns while maximizing heating effectiveness. In an environment where survival depended on maximizing every available resource, this level of efficiency wasn't just clever, it was essential. While heated stones provided targeted warmth for specific purposes, Inuit have another clever heating principle. Most discussions of Arctic survival focus on shelter, clothing, or fire. But there's another heating strategy that's often overlooked: the deliberate selection of tool materials to preserve body heat during use. Inuit tool design incorporated thermal principles that made winter work less dangerous and more efficient. Metal conducts heat rapidly. Touch a metal doorknob in winter, and you'll feel the chill immediately as it draws heat from your hand. This property makes metal tools problematic in extreme cold. Hold a metal knife at -40 degrees Fahrenheit with bare hands, and frostbite can begin in minutes as the metal pulls heat from your skin. Given these dangers, how did Arctic peoples handle tools before modern insulated handles became available? The answer lies in their material choices. Traditional Inuit tools were primarily made from bone, ivory, antler, and stone, all materials with significantly lower thermal conductivity than metal. These materials don't rapidly draw heat from hands during use, making them naturally warm to the touch even in freezing temperatures. Walrus ivory and caribou antler were particularly valued for tool handles and grips. These materials conduct heat approximately 20 times more slowly than steel. A handle carved from ivory might feel cool initially, but quickly warms to a comfortable temperature from hand contact. The same handle made of metal would continue drawing heat from the hand indefinitely, potentially causing frostbite during extended use. Slate, commonly used for ulu knives, has low thermal conductivity. When handled, slate doesn't create the painful cold sensation that metal produces. This property made stone tools naturally insulated against heat loss. No special grips or wrappings required. Tools that required metal components, like harpoon tips, used ingenious design adaptations. The metal parts were kept minimal and often mounted in bone or ivory bases. This limited the metal's contact with both hands and ice. Important since metal can stick to ice when moistened by breath or sweat, creating an additional hazard. Even the sled runners showed thermal consideration. While metal runners slide more efficiently, they can freeze solid to the snow if stopped for too long. Traditional bone or ivory runners don't develop the same freezing bond, making it easier to restart a journey after a break. You might not think frozen sled runners would be a life or death issue, but when you're miles from shelter with a storm approaching, getting stuck could be fatal. Wooden sled parts were often kept inside the igloo, partly to stop them from freezing and cracking, and partly because they stored a little heat. Wood has excellent thermal mass properties. It can absorb considerable heat without becoming too hot to touch, and then release that heat steadily over time. The handles of many tools were deliberately oversized, allowing users to operate them while wearing mittens. This design choice recognized that preserving hand warmth was more important than the slight decrease in dexterity from larger grips. Tools with smaller, more precise grips often featured quick-release designs that allowed them to be handled briefly, then returned to a warm pocket or mitten. Tool storage inside the igloo followed thermal logic as well. Rather than being kept near the doorway where temperatures were coldest, essential tools hung from the walls near sleeping platforms. This kept them warm and ready for use without wasting time or causing cold shock to the hands when grabbed. Even toy design incorporated these principles. Children's toys made of bone, antler, and ivory helped youngsters develop the dexterity needed for tool use while using thermally safe materials. This hands-on play taught children from an early age which materials felt warm or cold, knowledge that would later inform their tool selection and use. The ancient materials science behind Inuit tools may seem simple, but it solved complex problems of heat preservation in an environment where every calorie of body heat mattered. These subtle design elements, material selection, handle size, storage practices, completed a comprehensive approach to Arctic heating that began with the igloo itself and extended to every aspect of daily life.